2,500 years ago, things were very different. The world was ruled by great empires. One of the most powerful was ancient Persia, and believe it or not, it didn't just rival Israel, it ruled over it. Yes, that's right. What we now call Iran was once the mighty Persian Empire. And Israel? It was a small nation that had been conquered, scattered, and later allowed to return under Persian rule. Back then, Persia controlled much of the known world, and Israel was just a part of that puzzle. Today, the names have changed. Persia is now Iran, and ancient Israel has become the modern state of Israel. But the tension between these two nations has returned in a powerful way. Iran speaks boldly against Israel. Israel watches Iran carefully. They are not just enemies on paper. They are locked in a battle of ideas, religion, power, and history. But to understand why they're at odds today, we need to go back in time. This video will take you on a journey. First, we'll explore the rise of the Persian Empire, how it became so powerful. Then, we'll look at how Israel fell and became part of that empire. You'll see how Persia once helped the Jews rebuild their temple, and how today Iran calls for Israel's destruction. It's a strange and powerful twist of history. So why does Iran care so much about Israel today? Why does it want influence in the region? And how does this ancient rivalry affect modern wars, politics, and even religion? By the end of this video, you'll see that the past is not dead. The rise of the Persian Empire. Long ago, in the middle of what we now call the Middle East, a powerful man rose up. His name was Cyrus the Great. Around 550 BCE, he founded one of the greatest empires the world had ever seen, the Persian Empire, also called the Achaemenid Empire. Cyrus wasn't just a strong warrior, he was also a smart and kind ruler. He believed in winning battles, but also in treating people with fairness. His empire grew fast, stretching from the east, modern-day Iran and Central Asia, to the west, parts of Turkey and even Egypt. But one of his most famous acts wasn't about war, it was about freedom. In 539 BCE, Cyrus conquered Babylon, a great city that had once ruled over the Jewish people. The Babylonians had destroyed the first temple in Jerusalem and taken many Jews away from their homeland, forcing them to live in exile in Babylon. When Cyrus took over Babylon, everything changed. He didn't treat the Jews as enemies. Instead, he treated them with respect. The Bible even speaks highly of Cyrus. In Isaiah 45:1, Cyrus is called God's anointed, even though he wasn't a Jew or a worshiper of the God of Israel. God used him to fulfill a promise. Cyrus gave the Jews permission to go back to their homeland and rebuild their temple in Jerusalem. This was a huge moment in Jewish history. After years of sadness and loss, they had hope again, all because of a Persian king who believed in freedom and peace. Persian rule over ancient Israel. With Cyrus's approval, in 538 BCE, the Jewish people began their journey home. The land of Israel, also called Judah, was no longer a kingdom. It was now a small province within the large Persian Empire. The Persians called it Yehud Medinata. Them to live in peace and follow their religion. They were even given money and supplies to rebuild their temple, now known as the Second Temple. This was a sacred place where they could worship God once again. During this time, important Jewish leaders rose up, people like Ezra and Nehemiah. Ezra helped the people return to God's laws. Nehemiah worked to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem and protect the city. Life under Persian rule wasn't perfect, but it was far better than the time of exile. The Jews had no king, but they had freedom to worship, peace, and a new start. Persia didn't force its religion on them. It didn't destroy their culture. It allowed local leaders to guide the people, as long as they stayed loyal to the Persian king and paid their taxes. This time in history shows a strange twist. The Jews were ruled by a foreign empire, but that empire helped them rather than hurt them. It was a rare and special period of peace. The fall of Persia and changing powers. But as with all empires, Persia's time would come to an end. Around 330 BCE, a new name shook the world: Alexander the Great. He was the young king of Macedonia, a land in northern Greece. Alexander was not just a warrior. He was a conqueror with a dream: to rule the entire known world. He marched east with a powerful army and defeated the Persian Empire. Just like that, centuries of Persian rule came to an end. With the fall of Persia, Israel came under Greek control. At first, it seemed like just another change of rulers. But soon, life for the Jews became more difficult. The Greeks brought with them new ideas, language, and culture. Some Greek rulers wanted everyone in their empire to worship their gods and live like Greeks. This caused trouble for the Jewish people, who were loyal to their own God and traditions. This period led to more tension and even revolts, like the famous Maccabean Revolt. The land of Israel was stuck between powerful empires. The people had their faith and their history, but they rarely had freedom. Through it all, the story of the Persian Empire remained important. It reminded the Jews of a time when a foreign king had helped them, not harmed them. Cyrus the Great became a symbol of hope and justice. From ancient Persia to modern Iran. Now let's fast forward thousands of years. The Persian Empire may be gone, but its spirit still lives on, in a country called Iran. In fact, the name Iran was officially adopted in 1935. Before that, many in the world still called it Persia. Iran today is a modern nation, but many of its leaders and people still see themselves as part of an ancient and proud civilization. They remember the greatness of Cyrus the Great and the Achaemenid kings. They believe that Iran has a special place in history and a role to play in the world today. But in 1979, Iran changed in a big way. A revolution took place. The old king, called the Shah, was overthrown. A new leader, Ayatollah Khomeini, took over. He was a religious figure who believed that Iran should be a country ruled by Islamic law. This was the start of what we now call the Islamic Republic of Iran. After the revolution, Iran became deeply anti-Western and anti-Israel. They stopped working with the United States and began to see Israel as a major enemy. Why? Because Iran's leaders believed Israel was unjust, dangerous, and a threat to Muslims in the region. Over the years, Iran began to support groups that fought against Israel, like Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza. It also tried to spread its influence across the Middle East, using religion, money, and even military power. To many in Iran, this isn't just politics. It's a spiritual and historic mission. They see themselves as standing up against injustice, and in their eyes, Israel is the enemy. Nuclear technology. They fund enemies that attack Israeli civilians. For Israel, Iran is not just a rival, it's an existential danger. And so, an old rivalry has returned. But this time, it's not Cyrus the Great helping the Jews. It's modern Iran threatening them. The past and the present seem to mirror each other, but in reverse. Israel's rise as a modern power. The year was 1948. After centuries of exile, suffering, and wandering, the Jewish people declared the rebirth of their ancient homeland, Israel. For many Jews around the world, this was a miracle. For the first time in over 2,000 years, the land of Israel was once again under Jewish control. This new nation was born out of the ashes of the Holocaust, where 6 million Jews were murdered during World War II. The world had witnessed their suffering, and many agreed that they deserved a homeland, a safe place where they could live and thrive. At first, the global response was mixed. Some nations celebrated Israel's birth, others opposed it. Surprisingly, one of the countries that recognized Israel early on was Iran. Yes, Iran, the same country that is now Israel's enemy, once had good relations with the Jewish state. During the 1950s and 1960s, Iran and Israel even worked together behind the scenes. They shared intelligence, built trade ties, and saw each other as allies in a dangerous region. But everything changed in 1979. That year, Iran went through a revolution. The Shah of Iran was overthrown, and the new Islamic government, led by Ayatollah Khomeini, took power. This government had a completely different worldview. It believed that Israel was an illegal. Iran refused to recognize Israel. The two countries became bitter enemies. The modern rivalry, prophecy, power, and politics. Since the 1980s, Iran and Israel have been locked in a Cold War, a conflict fought not directly, but through proxies, secret missions, and powerful words. Iran supports Hezbollah, a militant group in Lebanon that regularly threatens Israel. It also backs Hamas, which controls Gaza and often launches rockets into Israeli cities. Iran has close ties to the Syrian government, which is another enemy of Israel. Through these groups, Iran spreads its power across the Middle East, from Lebanon to Syria to Gaza. Israel sees all of this as a major threat. It fears that Iran is surrounding it with enemies. That's why Israel has taken bold steps. It has carried out covert operations, including cyber attacks, airstrikes on weapons depots, and even assassinations of top Iranian scientists. Israel wants to stop Iran from building nuclear weapons, something Iran denies, but Israel fears deeply. At the same time, the war of words continues. Iran often calls for the end of the Zionist regime, meaning Israel. On TV, Iran paints Israel as a thief, a country that stole land and causes suffering. Israel, on the other hand, calls Iran an existential threat, meaning a danger to its very survival. Israeli leaders warn that a nuclear Iran could destroy them. The fear is deep and real. This rivalry isn't just about land or politics. For many, it feels like a battle between good and evil, truth and lies, God's promise and man's pride. Some people even look to the Bible to understand this conflict. In Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39, there is a prophecy about a great war in the last days. A nation from the north, called Magog, leads an army against Israel. today's conflict, we have to remember the past. Iran does not see itself as just another country. It believes it is the heir of ancient Persia, a great empire with a glorious history. From Cyrus the Great to modern leaders, Iran views itself as a protector of values, honor, and influence in the Middle East. Israel, on the other hand, sees itself as a restored nation, brought back to life by divine promise and human courage. After centuries of exile, the Jewish people believe God brought them home. Their survival and success are seen as miracles. This clash of civilizations, histories, and faiths fuels everything we see today. Iran wants to spread its power and message across the region, from Lebanon to Syria to Gaza. Israel wants to defend itself and live in peace, but it feels surrounded and targeted. Is this just politics, or is it history repeating itself? Once, Persia helped rebuild the Jewish temple. Now Iran funds those who try to destroy Israel. Once, a Persian king was called God's anointed. Today, Iranian leaders call for Israel to be wiped off the map. The echoes of the past are loud, and they still shape the choices of today. This is not just a story of war and peace. It's a story of identity, destiny, and belief. The rivalry between modern Iran and modern Israel reaches deep into the roots of history. It stretches back 2,500 years, to empires, prophets, kings, and promises. It's more than a conflict over land or politics. It's about how both nations see themselves, their purpose, and their future. Iran sees itself as the guardian of a proud civilization, bold, powerful, and unafraid. Israel sees itself as a miracle, reborn from ashes, protected by God, and determined to survive. In this ancient